Hey, Rachel had posted the other day about, reading multiple books at once and asked kind of a serious question. How do you go about reading and processing information out of books? And I wanted to break this down because I've developed this process that's really has helped me get the most out of the nonfiction books that I read. And I just wanted to share this with anybody who might find it useful. So Rachel, I've tagged you in this. Hopefully you're going to see it, but then I just want to make it available for everybody else. So full disclosure, I don't read as much as I used to. But for my fiction, for my fun stuff, which amounts to mainly spy novels and that kind of thing, I'll do audiobooks. But for books that I really want to try to learn something and retain information from, I will use real books, and there's a reason for that, and I will tell you what it is. I adapted my process from one that Nick Peterson, a mentor of mine, showed me or taught me, but my process is a little bit different just because I had to alter it to fit what works for me. So in a nutshell, there's basically 3 steps to what I do. The first thing I do is I read the book all the way through. I don't stop to take notes. I try not to leave too much time between sessions of reading. It's very rare that I have time to actually sit and read a book in its entirety. But I try not to let too much time pass, but I read the book all the way through. And the reason for that is it's just like when you get a new recipe. I have so many times in the past, I look at a new recipe and I'll just start in on it. And I find out halfway or 2/3 of the way through that even though it called for 4 eggs, I was supposed to hold one of them back and use it for later in the recipe. But here I've already put all 4 of them in the mix, whatever it is. My point is that most of the time books, these good, concept-driven self-help books that are really out to teach us something, they're meant to be read in their entirety. They're meant to be consumed as a whole because there's a lot of puzzle pieces that fit together, and a lot of times the good ones will build, from front to back. The concepts will build on top of each other, and you gain a much better understanding of the intent and the message of the book if you consume it in whole, as it's meant to be first thing. Okay. The second part of the process is, as I'm consuming that book the first time, as I'm reading it all the way through, there are going to be things that catch my eye. There are going to be concepts that are new to me, or reminders of something that I haven't thought about in a long time that stand out to me that I'm going to want to dig into. And just because of my inquisitive kind of researcher nature, I don't want to get off track. I want to make sure I consume it all in one time. So what I have is some of those the little tiny baby Post-it notes, not the big ones, but the little baby ones. That's just what I use. You can also get the little small ones that look almost like a piece of ribbon, maybe 2 inches long. And I use that to flag the pages that, have concepts on them that I want to come back to. So as I'm reading it that first time, I don't let myself get off track. And the way I do that is I use something to mark that page. Now, I know people will say, well, I highlight those, those sections, or I go ahead and take notes out of it. Well, I'm a big fan of taking notes, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but I don't want to get distracted. And I don't know, it's probably just me being old school, but I have highlighted in books before, but there's just something that bothers me about defacing a book. I mean, what if somebody else uses the book later on and they're distracted by highlights and notes and things like that I've made? Also, I find that once I highlight it, I might forget it. It's like I highlight it and then it's in and then out, and I might forget where to go back and find it. So I don't get distracted, and so that I, can get back to the concept that struck me in that moment, because a lot of times you have these aha moments and you can't remember them an hour later or 3 days later or 5 days later. So all that to say, as I'm reading the book in its entirety, all the way through the first time, I am flagging pages, and I might end up with that whole book, with multiple little flags sticking out from, from all angles. And that's, that's okay. Because I know I'm going to be able to find them. If it's a really good one full of good stuff, you might see a whole lot of post-it notes sticking out of mine, or little flags. So that's the second part of my process. Now, the third part of my process for really retaining information and getting something out of these books instead of just taking it in and letting it pass through, because I do this extra step because it's not just that I'm using this stuff for me. I'm using it to try to bring new concepts and new information to you all as well. And in order to do that, I have to spend some time with it. I have to simmer on it. I have to try to relate to it, especially if it's a new concept. So after I've gone through it and I've marked, after I've read it the first time and I've marked things that stand out to me that I want to come back to, I have a notebook. And those of you who've known me for a while know that I'm a big fan of just a plain old spiral notebook. I will stock up on those things at back to school time when you can get them cheap. And I'll literally have a notebook that's dedicated to the book I'm reading right then, if that makes sense to you. I will open up that brand new spiral notebook, or one that I've torn out the other pages of. It's clean and fresh. It's dedicated to that book. And I'll start at the beginning of that book and I'll find my flags. When I get to the first one, I'll locate the portion, the concept that I wanted to dig into, and I will write it, handwrite that concept or quote, whatever it is that has stood out to me. I'll handwrite that on the top of the page in that notebook. Now, you can do one of two things, and I've done this both ways. I might dig into that concept right then, or if I'm, if I know I'm going to have time later to really dig into things, but right now I'm just wanting to build up my research notebook, I will go ahead and go through that whole book, and I'll reserve, a page or 2 pages, whatever I think I need for whatever concept I wrote or quote that I wrote at the top of that page. And I'll go to the next one, and I'll go to the next clean page, or leave 2 or 3 pages, whatever. And I will write a note out at the top of that next page, the next concept that I have flagged. And I will go through that whole book that way, capturing all of those things that I noted that I wanted to come back to, or that I had questions about, and I will make note of them in that notebook. Okay? And anything pertinent to that concept or that quote or that thought or whatever. Then, so I guess I'll say it's a 4-part process. So that was the third part. The fourth part is, in order for me to really retain and be able to share information like this, I need to apply it to something in real life. I need to find a way to reword the concept in a way that makes sense to me. I have done a training for y'all in the past on the concept of learned helplessness, and that's what I did as soon as I read that concept in an article. I immediately started filling up notebook pages about it and really starting to think, how does this apply to my life or to people that I've met or people that I've worked with? How can I apply this concept and help somebody else understand and kind of bridge some gaps for themselves the way this is doing for me? So I have notebooks full of my interpretation, my own words, my own application of these concepts, quotes, whatever, that I've gathered from books I've read. And that is the way that I can commit these things to memory. It's not just memorizing. That's how I got through school, memorizing things for the test and moving on. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work for long-term usefulness, effectiveness. My time is valuable, and I don't want to waste it just reading something that becomes just dust in the wind for me. If I take the time to consume it, I want to make it useful and effective for me and for the people that I serve. So I always will go through, and the concepts that really speak to me, that really resonate with me, or that I'm curious about, I will research them. I'll go online and look for other examples, and I will really think about how I can apply them to me or to people that I work with, and write it out. Then it's there. It's in here, and I can pull it back up. I can I'll be in a situation and I'll think, oh yeah, I've dealt with something like this before, or yeah, I know what could apply, what could help in this situation, or a different way to look at a particular situation, because I've gone through it in my head already. That is it. That's my process. I hope that this is helpful. I hope this gives you, something to think about. You don't have to do it exactly this way. This is just how I do it. And I cannot stress enough how important it is that if you are on a journey of self-improvement, self-awareness, any of these things that cause you to reach out and buy these books, that you find a way that works for you to actually apply them, to actually commit them to, or at least the concepts that are meaningful to you, commit them to being part of how you, part of your toolbox, part of how you deal with life. Because otherwise, why spend that money? Why spend that time taking in that information and not doing what you can to actually use it and apply it? And it's okay. Sometimes we get a hold of a book that just doesn't hit it for us. I have, there's some books out there that people just rave over and quote all the time, and they just don't do it for me. There's nothing in them, or not enough in the book to really make me go, oh yeah, this is something I could live by. And that's okay. It's not the same for everybody. So hope it's helpful, and let me know. I'm gonna go ahead and drop this in the YouTube channel. Let me know in the comments if this process works for you. If you do something different, share it. Let's talk about it. Let's hear what other people do. Hope y'all have a great day.